Hi, I'm Dave from Powerhoof. We're a two-man indie team. We've been making games in Unity for the last few years, but I've been making games for about 15 years now. And I want to show you some systems and tools I've been building in Unity to help me make point-and-click adventure games. I'll talk about my motivations for making my own tool rather than using the stuff that's already out there. And I'll try not to get too technical on implementation and just sort of show you the way I put stuff together and the reasons I've chosen to do it the way I did. It'll probably help if you've used Unity before, but it'll still be interesting if you've used Adventure Game Studio, or if you have some programming experience or just interested in making adventure games really. So firstly, I'll just show you a couple of the projects I've done with this system. So the first is this Murderside game, Murderside 2017, which is a kind of parody cyberpunk thing. I think it's just good when you're making tools and systems to have a game that you're actually building at the same time, because if you're doing it in isolation, you tend to just have a kind of a tool that when you go to use it is like full of bugs, and the workflow might just be really horrible, and you won't know it until you actually go to start making a game. So this was the game I kind of wanted to make to help me make the tool set, but it was pretty fun, so I ended up polishing up and releasing it. And a few weeks ago there was a game jam, Adventure Jam 2017, and we made a game for that in under a week called Peridium. And Barney did the art for this one, so it's a bit nicer looking than my one, although we did it much quicker. So yeah, but yeah, that was a good another trial by fire for the system I'd made, and I was pretty happy with how it worked. We were able to get stuff in pretty quickly and make a cool little game. So you can check out any of these games I've made on at powerhoof.com. So yeah, going back to 2002, my first sort of foray into making games was when I founded this little engine called Adventure Game Studio. And Adventure Game Studio is a really nice little tool for really quickly being able to chuck some images in a game and some sort of hotspots and things to walk behind and characters, and then just be able to add dialogue and make an adventure game. So the first thing I did was, when I found it, was to use some photos of my backyard and my family and stick them in and make a little like room that I could walk around in. It's like, holy crap, I can make an actual game now. Before that, I'd never sort of really thought of it as something you could do yourself, especially just in a few hours making something that's playable. So I got right into that, and the community was awesome. They had a big focus on like making little games and sharing them with each other, and not worrying if your art isn't very good because you're just starting out and you've never done like any graphics before. But if you've got like a cool story or fun characters, then you get a lot of support. And it was a really good place to start out making games. So this was the first game I made. It was called Good Santa, Bad Santa, and you could play it either as being nice to people or being really horrible. So you got an alignment. That was done for a monthly competition. It was kind of basically a game jam. The theme was Christmas, because it was in December. It wasn't called a game jam at the time because that term wasn't really around, and in fact the term indie wasn't around. I think we called ourselves amateur adventure game developers. So didn't really consider it that it was a proper thing you could do. It was just like, this is just a fun hobby. But then there was some really professional projects that came out, which is cool. Nowadays, it's just like being an indie is like a proper thing, which is awesome. So yeah, and I developed the thing with the photos I was doing, from that very first experience I had of taking a photo and putting it in the game, and made some games starring myself. And got friends to take photos of friends and like put them in as characters, and I made some sort of more cartoony kind of things, and also some things that weren't adventure games. So this was like a platformer beat 'em up thing, which is a lot closer to what the sort of games that I ended up making professionally. So from there I went on to work in a couple of game studios. After I did computer science at uni, and we made stuff with C++ game engines that were sort of custom for PS2 all the way up to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. So I kind of went through all that stuff and then did a bunch of mobile games as well, but then decided to quit mobile games with a friend and start our own indie company, make kind of crazy retro-ish kind of games again. So our first game was Crawl, which is what we've mainly been doing for the last 4 years. And that was using Unity. We decided to use Unity because I wanted to like be working on games and not working on engines. And yeah, that's done really well. So we've been we're still making stuff and supporting that game, but sort of thinking about other stuff we want to do as well. And one of the things when I quit that I wanted to do was to make some more adventure games, because I hadn't done it for ages. So make some more stuff in Adventure Game Studio, because I always really liked making games in that engine. But now that I've got so much experience in Unity, I kind of want to use all the stuff I've learned, and like I don't want to waste that. I want to kind of be able to use that as well. There's awesome games still being released in Adventure Game Studio, but I want to be able to kind of have the flexibility to do a lot more complicated non-adventure gamey stuff that just ends up being quite complicated to put together in Adventure Game Studio and have it feel really good. Anyway, so there is some other tools for Unity as well that are really good. So there's like Icebox Studios has Adventure Creator, and the reason I didn't want to go with something like that, or I actually tried some of those tools, but the reason I didn't stick with those was because they're made for people who aren't very technical, and anyone could get in and jump in and make some games. But for me, when I've got all this experience programming, got all this experience using Unity, that's more of a hindrance than a help. Like I really want something that I can just like type code and like make things happen. I don't want to have to drag nodes around in a nice flowchart, because that's just kind of clunky compared to typing a few lines of code. And I really liked the workflow that Adventure Game Studio had, and so I wanted to kind of see if I could get some of that across into Unity, and most of that was the way that the scripting works. So I'll jump in, and the first thing I'll show you is a bit of Adventure Game Studio, because really that's a model I use to try and make things in Unity. Unity is like super complicated. There's you can make any game you want in it, 3D, 2D, whatever. And so the first thing I did was try and go, okay, well, how can I simplify the workflow down to the things that I actually want to be able to do, make that as easy as possible. So yeah, this is Adventure Game Studio, and this is another little game I made called The Unicated. This was for another little adventure game jam thing. This one was the theme was Evil Twin, and so I made something where you can join twins and one of you is evil, one of you is like good. So you've got the basic adventure game stuff, walk around, talk to people, but basically you're trying to avoid having a surgery to get you split, because one of you is going to die if that happens. But yeah, like, you click something, there's a bit of a dialogue stuff, basic adventure game things. I'll show you the basic elements of an adventure game. So they're all kind of listed nicely in Adventure Game Studio. You got sort of your general setup, inventory items, like adventure games always have a bunch of inventory items, characters, obviously. Adventure games have lots of characters, rooms, and then inside rooms you've got a bunch of different elements. So there's the characters which are placed in the room, the objects, which are basically visual things inside the room that you might want to switch on and off, or be able to click on, that kind of thing. Hotspots, which are things that maybe are built into the background, but you can click and have an interaction. Some walkable areas for your pathfinding, so your character doesn't just walk off into the space or whatever. So yeah, the main elements that you want to have like nicely set up are characters, so you can add characters easily and edit them easily, and then the rooms with all the stuff in the rooms, and inventory items. So they're the core things. I'll show you like a script interaction works in Adventure Game Studio. So basically anything you can click on has a bunch of actions associated with it. So there's two sort of sections here. There's like the setup for the hotspot, like what it's called, the description. So if I hover my mouse over it, what it'll tell me what it tells me it is. So in this case, it's a locker, and characters also have that sort of stuff. So if I click on, say, the patient character that you saw sitting here, you can see he's got a bunch of settings. So he's got a color for his speech. He's set up to be clickable. He's got start position and a bunch of different properties. And then he's got some actions as well. So, you can click on him or use inventory items on him. But going back to the bedroom, if I look at the actions for this hotspot, the locker, there's one for interacting with it and one for using inventory item on it. So if I click the little ... ellipses on that, then that'll take me to a function where it's got a bunch of code I've written. If I go back to the room and say I want to add a look at, and I want something to happen when I look at this, I can click the ... and it'll actually add that function for me, and I can just start typing code in there. And the sort of stuff you type it's almost like writing a movie script, but you've got a little bit of code mixed in there. So if I type c.p, which is my main character, I can say, let's say, hello, and then when I look at that, the character will say hello. I'll show you what happens when you interact with it. So it's telling the player to walk, and then face up, and then if you've clicked on him with the good button, the left click, then the character says something. It's got a big combo lock on it. Otherwise, it says there's no breaking that open with the evil character. And all this stuff happens in order. So like you'll tell the player to walk up to something. It'll wait for that to finish, and then they'll face up. It'll wait for that to finish. Then the character will say some stuff, or it'll wait for that to finish, and it'll go to the next line. And so that's just a really nice way of doing things. And if you're familiar with coding, usually you can't just have a function which then has like a bunch of stuff happening that waits for ages before the next line, because that would make the whole game freeze. But that's the thing that's really nice in this system is, the game is kind of still running and still animating and everything. But this script just pauses at this point until the character's finished walking in this case, or talking in this case. And so that's one of the things I really wanted to try doing in Unity. And there's some mechanisms in there which make that pretty easy to do just in default Unity script. So that was a thing I wanted to get going. So that's Adventure Game Studio. In the next video, I'll show you Unity in my system and how you set up a room in that and all that kind of thing. Cool. See ya.